was during the midst of everything, trying to figure things out as far as my personal life, trying to get everything rocking and rolling. I got a car and an apartment in the same week, which was terrifying. I mean, this is the first time that I have a brand new vehicle, so I got a monthly note on that. And then, like I said, we moved into a bigger place to where, we have a lot of room and have, the things to put everywhere. But I mean, it's still overwhelmingly like bigger and more of an expensive rent payment. So there's all of that different stuff. And then plus I'm trying to balance this personal life, school, work, everything happening all at once. And last week it actually came kind of not to a crashing halt, but I mean to a point where like I did have a panic attack. It was a lot. I made sure to reach out to everybody who is close to me, all the people who I look up to, so they could give me, processes and, pieces of advice and positive affirmations and things like that so they could help me get through it. But it wasn't even anything crazy because I come on this podcast or the other podcast every single week. I've attended red carpet premiere events with big name celebrities there, charity events. So stage fright has never really been a thing for me, but for my final for a class that I was taking in college, I don't know why. It was like the anticipation. We had to write like a brief essay about who we are, what we wanted to do in the course, and our backstory on the industry that we're in and things like that. So that I don't know why the anticipation of writing that and what I wrote was actually very good because
Yeah.
I mean obviously I do this shit. But to freaking go up there and present it to people who I had either just met or for this specific class, people come in just for this class. So I mean that was a little uneasy because these are complete strangers that I've never had a conversation with, even though again, like at our premiere, I'm standing up there in front of 30 to 50 people and we're
Yeah.
answering Q&A questions and things like that. But this it's a prime example of showing you that mental health can pop up at any time. It doesn't matter what's going on. With a lot of pressure that you put on yourself and a lot of changes happening all at once, it can be very daunting. It can be very anxiety inducing to the point where you do just shut down. And that's what I did. I shut down and like I was able to text everybody, but if I was with somebody in person, I would have been quiet because that's how I have my panic attacks. I'm very quiet. I just completely zone out. Like, even to this point, I was like physically shaking, which was crazy because that hasn't happened in a while. But I just wanted to show an example of, these things happen every single day. It's
Yeah.
just the amount of pressure that you have at, one given time. And I would say this is probably the first time I've put this much this quick. And I think that was probably
Well,
what was the anxiety inducing part.
I have a theory on it. I have a theory on it because of you've been relatively large on a small stage. And with the addition of the car, with the addition of the new place, with the addition of school, and now I feel like all of that has expanded your stage and you were feeling small. You were feeling small now on a very large stage. And that can be very intimidating. Where you were in command before, because you had it all very tight and concise, now it's very wide. And now it's overwhelming. And so and you've lost no ground. You're still that big person, but you feel small because the stage has gotten bigger. And that's my theory on what happened. Right? Because this is the first time that you've had all of this going on and in this situation. And that can bring on moments of like, oh shit, what have I gotten myself into? Right? Like, I remember that feeling. I remember, when I first got married and we got into our place and I was terrified. And then just as I was getting comfortable, I'm pregnant. What?
Right.
Wait a minute, I just figured this out. Now we've got something else coming? Like, oh shit. So I had just started the job at the station, and like, so I understand where you were coming from, and why. I really do believe that's what happened, because I felt that way. I'm like, all of a sudden my world is just getting ridiculously big, and all of these things are coming into it, and am I even ready for all that? Right? Of course you are. Right? You're fine, but you got to take that process of figuring it out and stepping back and going, I'm good. It's all good. For me, and this is funny because we're doing a little project with our film, y'all, and we were talking about comfort zones and stepping outside the comfort zone and what was our first big thing. And I shared recently that for me, it was, and this has been a big change in my life and something that I've been dealing with over the last year or so. And it's really understanding. So my comfort zone, the first time I ever kind of got out of my comfort zone is when I got divorced. And for the first time in my entire life, I was on my own. Prior to that, I had always had family with me, or I had a roommate with me, or I had my wife with me. And for the first time, I was all on my own, and I was like terrified. I'm like, oh my God, I've never been alone. I don't know how to do this. And I was horribly out of my comfort zone. I'm like, I don't know if I can be on my own. Am I responsible enough? Can I cook? Can I take care of myself? How do I maintain being a dad now? How can I take care of my child when now I feel like the child? I don't even know if I can take care of myself. I got to get my situation all straight and everything. So, but what I learned over the years, and specifically this year in general, is, and this is important for anybody out there listening, because I feel like a lot of people go through this as well. There is a giant difference between being alone and being lonely. And I had to differentiate between that, because I would get myself into these downward spirals where I was convincing myself that I'm lonely. I need somebody. I can't be alone anymore. That's just not the case. I wasn't lonely. I was just alone and needed to figure out how to be alone, how to function alone. And it's been a journey, but I can say this: I actually have figured it out, and I like my alone time now. It's good for my mental health. It's like sometimes, well, even for you, like you said, with anxiety and being in front of groups of people, and sometimes I like the idea that sometimes I can just be all me. And I can go somewhere or do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I can just scream out loud if I need to. And just so learning to be alone but not lonely has been a drastic change in my life over the last year. And it's really kind of helped me come into my own. And I think now I feel much happier and better when I am with groups of people, or when I am with people, because I'm not dependent on that anymore. And that makes me better, because I feel like when you're with people and you're dependent on them, it plays into that. And you gotta understand that you gotta lose that codependency type thing. So yeah, it's crazy how it all works, man. But again, I'm just a firm believer in everything. We're just really not in control. We're not driving the car. And we just figure it out and go where we're supposed to go. And eventually we get where we're supposed to get.